Welcome to ULCA. ULCA stands for Universal Language Contribution API. It's an open source, scalable data platform supporting various types of datasets and models for Indic languages, along with a user interface for interacting with them. Mighty develops ULCA and it is part of the broader NLTM initiative or Bhashani. In this video, let's look in detail at how to modify your model APIs to make it ULCA-compliant. One thing to clarify before going into detail is that ULCA doesn't support the hosting of models in its infrastructure, but it rather expects submission of an endpoint hosted elsewhere that is standardized as per the ULCA specifications. ULCA standards are defined by coordinating and discussing with several research institutes and are expected to cater to almost all considerable cases. In case you feel that the model you own has an extra feature that is outside the scope of ULCA specs, please reach out to us for a discussion. Let's divide the video contents into three sections. First one is modifying your API to make it ULCA compliant. Next, creating the JSON file to submit it in ULCA. And the last as submitting and publishing or benchmarking your model in ULCA. ULCA supports different model types like translation, transliteration, text-to-speech, audio-speech recognition, named entity recognition, etc. For easy understandability about submission of a model, let's discuss translation models in this video. So let's go to the first part, modifying your API to make it ULCA compliant. Assume that you have a translation API. Ideally, it should be accepting a sentence and the language to which it is to be translated. To understand the ULCA standard, you have to open the ULCA specs in Swagger Validator. The link to Swagger Validator and ULCA model schema is provided in the description. So let's look at a demo of how to open Swagger Validator and ULCA schema in it. First, go to validator.swagger.io and paste the ULCA schema link in the box provided. Once it's done, we'll be able to view the ULCA schema in the Swagger Validator. Here, since we have been discussing about the request and response structure for translation API, let's search and go to that part. Yes, so here you can expand and see the translation request and response formats. In this video, I'll only be covering the required and mandatory fields, but in a separate video, we'll be covering each and every granular ones in detail. So let's start. In the translation request, there will be two mandatory fields. One is input and another is config. Input is nothing but a list of source sentences. The source field must have the sentences that are to be translated. And in config, there are two fields. One is model ID and language. In case your translation model requires a model ID to be passed as a parameter for the translation function to happen, this field could be used. Otherwise, it's optional and you can feel free to avoid it. And in the language, the major two relevant fields are source language and target language. These are the language codes which is supported by ULCA. You cannot use a free text here. So basically, in case this source field, if you are planning to give an English sentence, the source language means it is English, and if the sentence has to be translated to the Hindi language, you could use this target language fields and provide as FCHI here. The translation response is also similar. It should have a mandatory output field, and the output will be a list of dictionaries. Each dictionary will have two fields, one is source and next is target. Source is the sentence which you provide in the input time for translation, and the target must have the translated sentence. This config is nothing but exactly similar to what we pass at the request time. I have opened a Postman window here. Assume that your translation API accepts a sentence and translate language field right now, as shown here. To make it ULCA compliant, you will be following the schema and making changes. And finally, your input will look something like this. You will have an input with a source sentence and a config with source and target languages, which will be the input request. And once you make the request, the output will also follow the same structure. You will have an output field with source and target sentences, and if provided optionally, the config, which is same as what you provided in input as well. In case you feel that things are getting complex, don't worry. We have added the sample request and response structure in the GitHub README. You can just go there, see this, and replicate to your request and response format to match according to this. Then this will be accepted by ULCA. Now, since we have seen the request and response structure, And assuming your API is altered to suit this format, we will be creating a metadata file. It should be in JSON format, and this metadata file should be submitted to Ulka, and then your model will be available through the Ulka system. The metadata file, which is in JSON format, should also follow the schema which has been defined in the same. Let us expand and check each fields one by one. First one is the name field. Here we could give any name which will be displayed in Ulka for the model that you submit. Next is a version field. Here you could specify the version of your model that you are submitting. It could be a string and can be something like v1, v2, v1.0, etc. Next is the description field. Here you could provide a large sentence description about your model or anything related to it. Next is the reference URL. This could be any URL where more details about the model or training data could be found. Next is the task field. It's a dictionary with a subfield as type. This type should be an Ulka supported option. It could be, you could choose it as translation, transliteration, DTS, etc. Since our example deals with translation model, you could fill it as task type, and the type should be translation. Next is the languages field. It is a list of dictionary, and in our translation model we can provide the source language and target language which the model supports. It cannot be a free text, but as discussed in the API request and response format, it should be a language ISO code supported by Ulka. Next there are two optional fields. One is language detection enabled, next is multilingual. This language detection enabled should be set to true only if your model supports auto detection of the language, and this multilingual should be set to true only if the same model supports more than one languages. These both fields are optional, and by default they are false. Next is the license field. The license field should be one among the licenses which Ulka supports. It's not a free text, but it should be one among the provided options. In case the license is available in any URLs, you could specify that as well in the license URL field. Next is the domain field. Assume your model is trained to function specifically in any kind of domains like news, medical, etc. You could specify that here. Even this is not a free text, but it's a list of options. These options are provided as seen here. It should be either one or more among this. In case your model supports any additional options, please let us know. Next is the submitter field. Here, the details about the model submitter could be provided. Then it's again a sub-dictionary where multiple subfields are available, namely name, it's the name of the submitter, auth ID is like the email ID or details, that's an optional field. About me is details about the contributor, and team, where again the name of team members and details about them could be provided. Next is the training dataset field. Here the details about the dataset used to train the model could be provided. There could be a dataset ID and description about the datasets. Next is the important field, inference endpoint. It is in the inference API field that we provides more and more info about the URL and the details to access the endpoint where the model is hosted. The callback URL is the URL to hit the model. Next is a field called inference API key. In case your callback URL requires an API key to be accessed, this field could be utilized. There is a subfield called name and value. Name is optional. This is the name of the API key that is used, and the value is the value of the API key. For example, by default the name will be authorization. In case if it's something different like an API key, you could utilize this name field and provide it. By default it would be treated as authorization. And value key is where you specify the API key which Ulka could be utilized to hit the endpoint. Next is multilingual enabled field. This is an optional field. Just use it in case the same URL could be utilized to access or detect more than one languages. Next is the schema field. Since schema is common for all the model types, you could see multiple options here. But in case you are planning to submit a translation model, just expand it. Then you could see three subfields here. First is the task type. As discussed above, it's the same thing only. It is a type of model. This is type It is the type of task that the model is designed to perform. You could choose one among the options here. Since it's a translation model that we are discussing in the example to submit, choose translation. And request is nothing but the same object that we are sending to the endpoint. We have discussed it in the earlier section of the video. The same could be provided here, and a response sample also could be provided. Two additional fields are isSync API. Assume your API is an async type, then only these fields come into play. Otherwise, you could ignore this. Let's go to an example metadata file which is available in our Ulka repo so that things will be much more clearer to you. So it will look something like this. It will be a JSON file and will have these many values. You could see name, version, description, reference URL, task type, languages, license, domain, submitter details, etc. available here. Create such a JSON file. Once you are ready with the metadata JSON file by referring to the examples and schema, let's check on how to submit the model. Log into Ulka and go to Explore Models page and click on the Submit Model tab. Here you could upload the JSON file. Upload it and click on Submit button. If there is any error, it will be shown there as in here. Let's fix it and try submitting it again. Upon successful submission, you will be getting a serial number in the screen could be seen. Now go to My Contribution section. Here you could see the model that you have submitted currently. By default, it will be in unpublished state. Here you can just click on Publish so that it will be available in the Explore Model sections. Before that, we can also run the set of predefined benchmark on this model. To do that, just click on the Run Benchmark section. Here you could see the available list of benchmark datasets on which the model could be evaluated. Since it's an English Hindi model, these are the list of available benchmark datasets. So select one and click on Submit so that the benchmark will start running. Once benchmark is completed, you could see the results here, and if it's satisfactory, let's click on Publish so that the model could be visible in the Explore Model section. So now we are back here after a while, and as you could see, the benchmark runs has been completed and scores are visible here. If the scores are satisfactory, you could publish this particular model so that rest of the world could access it. Let's check that. Click on Publish button and accept it. So you could see it's published. If you need to unpublish, you could redo the process by clicking here. Let's check Explore Models with translation and search for the dummy model which we have uploaded. Yes, it is here. You can try the model here. As you can see, the model is translating perfectly. So here we have seen the example of submitting a translation model. The procedure to submit other types of models like ASR, TTS, transliteration models, etc. are more or less similar. Only the request and response structure part differs. We will be discussing in another video the request and response structure for all the model types. So I hope this video is of help to you, and let's conclude it here. Thank you.